It's Thursday, January 8th. I'm Jake Ward. This is the Rip Current. We look at the big invisible forces grabbing at us. And one of the forces that is, I guess, going to grab at us if their designers have their way is robots. We are more and more awash in the prototypes of robotics that will be, in our house, in theory, flipping our pancakes, tucking in our kids, folding our laundry, helping our elderly relatives off the floor. And all of that is on display right now at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. I want to talk about the history of this kind of robotics, what the use case might possibly be, and why I think there's something fairly anti-democratic in the way this and other kinds of technology are moving forward. I want to start with a robot Olympics I once attended on the asphalt of a Florida speedway about a decade ago. I was I had convinced my bosses at Al Jazeera that it would make great television to go and cover live a robot Olympics being thrown by the military. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, had and I believe continues to have, a challenge each year for anybody, a university or private team that wants to come in and try and fulfill a bunch of tasks, in this case, under the glare of camera lights on this speedway. And the tasks at the time were hilarious and ridiculous because they were very simple. And I didn't do my due diligence. So I convinced these guys, hey, this is going to be great television, robots duking it out on the speedway. And they were like, yeah, sounds great. So we go there, we turn on the camera, and it's the first of these events. And here's a sort of, this is not quite fair, but this is kind of what it looked like. Basically, robots pitching sideways and falling into the dirt. It was them trying to open a door and falling through the doorway. It was an endless sequence of robots eating it, trying to do fairly simple tasks. And this is really we've been in this place for quite a while. And in fairness, it's because it's really hard to make robots that can do this kind of thing. This is specifically a compilation put together by IEEE Spectrum to show this kind of thing. But I remember this one in particular. I was standing right by this one. Oh man, these robots trying to get up these stairs and just falling and falling and falling. It was such a sad thing. And that's because, again, it is very, very hard to make robots do these sorts of things well. I use in my book, The Loop, the example of these kinds of robots to describe just how hard it is to actually automate individual human decisions in the way that humans make them. Trying to teach a robot to do something like order a sandwich at a Subway involves such an incredible decision tree of pre-programming to make it possible. But AI, of course, is now making it possible for these things to learn from a whole big, broad, unstructured set of experiences rather than having to be told each time, okay, lift your leg, okay, now flex your toe, in the way that was so disastrous with these guys trying to get up the stairs. And that's why we're seeing at CES right now this week, robot after robot after robot being displayed that can do all sorts of manual tasks that were once upon a time impossible. So LG has this robot, the Cloyd, that is supposed to be a laundry folder. And I remember back in the day, as the editor-in-chief of Popular Science magazine, looking at robots that were supposed to be doing this, and my God, they took forever. It was like an hour for a robot to fold a single piece of laundry. They're not a lot faster than that, according to the people who've been watching these things in Las Vegas this week. They're still very slow motion in their tasks. And that is, of course, because you don't want this thing recklessly spinning around and, grabbing whatever and trying to fold your cat or whatever. It needs to be extremely cautious. But it's not exactly practical to imagine that this thing is going to do this anywhere near as fast as you or I might. Now, do you want to leave it just sort of doing it all night so that you can relax and go to sleep? I mean, maybe that's the use case. I'm not sure. But then there are these cases in which you can see that it's kind of a different piece of technology that they have in mind, or at least a different job function. So in Vegas, it's appropriate, of course, to have this thing dealing cards, right? That's one of them. And what's interesting is that once upon a time, it really took the an entire nation state's worth of money to make this possible, because only really the Japanese, but principally the Koreans, were focused on this stuff. They were the ones most focused on this. But these days, you're seeing robots from China. Here is Shenzhen, I can't pronounce this properly, Zhongjing Robotics Technology Company, showing off this thing that they call the T-800, a full-scale humanoid, right, for general purpose. I don't like the, let's rise against our human masters pose of this thing, but, that's fine, whatever. But the one that's grabbing my attention right now, of course, is that Hyundai is making a lot of moves in their in this world. They've had for a long time a robot they've been working on called Atlas, that now Boston Dynamics is part of, and because Hyundai bought Boston Dynamics, and this general manager is showing that this thing with its incredible, if you compare this to the ones that were falling down before, right? This thing can pick things up, pick and place them, turn around, do this, that, and the other, right? It is a very, very capable loader kind of robot, one that can do all sorts of really impressive tasks across this stuff. And what these folks, these product leads and product managers are, the reason that they are debuting this thing right now is because Hyundai is telling us that they're going to deploy humanoid robots at a U.S. factory in 2028. The first one they have in mind is one in Georgia. And that manufacturing plant marks a step, according to Reuters, toward automating higher risk and repetitive manufacturing tasks. This is in the words of Hyundai. And this production version of this Atlas humanoid robot, which I've seen in prototype for years and years and years and years, slowly folding laundry and falling over and doing all this stuff, they say that they really think it's going to be able to do this kind of work, so much so that it's going to be possible to build a factory capable of manufacturing 30,000 robot units a year beginning in 2028. And so it is a big change, a big shift in which these companies are really starting to believe that this stuff is not just plausible, but viable as a task. Now, we've seen before now, right, the reason that the humanoid form factor is notable and interesting is because we've seen before now that making a robot that can do a very specific repetitive task is doable, right? In automotive manufacturing for a long, long time, when a chassis comes in down the production line and arrives in front of a particular kind of robot, that robot can swing over and arc weld very specific, precise points, right? It can't improvise, though. It can't, shift a door or do things that a human might be able to do in terms of improvisation. It can only just what they call pick and place. It just does this very specific stuff. The reason that these humanoids are so extraordinary is that they really are improvisational. They are capable of grabbing things of different size and putting them where you want them to and adapting along the way, not to mention adapting in terms of their balance, which has been a big problem in the past. And the rise of AI has made it possible such that, again, you don't have to pre-program these things to understand their task in advance. You don't have to, give it a rote set of instructions that it just follows to the letter. Instead, you can give it general guidance and it will pull it off. And it's large language models that make that possible. I was at a demonstration in 2024, as early as 2024, in which Amazon showed off through a partner of theirs a robotic system where you could tell it, go grab the blue bucket and bring it over here. And you don't have to say how far away the bucket is, how much it weighs, what the parameters of this operation are going to be. You just say, go get me the blue bucket, and it can understand that and go grab it, which is a big deal. But what none of this, of course, accounts for is democratic choice, right? Now, Hyundai's CEO, in his discussion about this stuff, is very quick to say, that this is not going to replace humans. The language that he uses is very specific. He says, our robots don't compete with humans, they compete for humans. We call this human-centered automation. It means deploying robots to handle the tasks that are repetitive, physically demanding, or potentially dangerous, so our team members can focus on higher value work that requires human judgment, creativity, and oversight. Lifting heavy components, working in extreme temperatures, and performing the same motion thousands of times per shift take a physical toll on workers over time. And they say that as a result, they're going to be able to reduce injuries and improve quality of life and the rest of it. And they say that they will also be able to create new high-skilled jobs through workforce development with great pay and job stability and long-term career growth. But of course, you speak to a labor union about this right now, and they tell you that they do not feel this way, right? This is a world in which some of the last truly steady union jobs are really, really under threat, right? The United Auto Workers kind of work in which you can retire on a salary that you earn without a college education with benefits, that's a hard job to come by these days. And it's going to only get harder as robots move into this world. Now, is this a reason not to develop them? I don't know. All I know is there aren't any real democratic inputs about this. Nobody is voting yes or no on whether this kind of thing should go forward. And at the moment, the answer to the question, should people be worked as hard as robots, seems to be no, let's replace them with robots, not no, we should make the job conditions of employment of an employee more humane, right? We're not saying don't work people as hard as robots, just put robots, we're not saying don't work people as hard as robots, instead pull them back to a more humane standard. We're saying instead, yes, let's work, somebody's work as hard as robots, and we'll make robots do that. Which is the sort of that's the forward pitch of capitalism, right? Is you just keep going and you do it as cheaply as you can. And so what's interesting to me is that this is happening at a time when we knew already that low-skilled jobs in the past have been the ones most under threat from new technology, whereas high-skilled jobs and high-paying jobs were not. Now we're in a world where LLMs are replacing entry-level positions that are going to get people into the kind of stable careers they might need. In many cases, the kind of stable careers that you would want to have without a college degree. That's admin, that's, being a receptionist, that's being a bookkeeper, being a clerk, right? Those jobs being wiped out at the entry level such that, non-college educated women, for instance, are going to be really deeply affected by this stuff. But also people at the high level. There's footage after footage, instance after instance of people at this year's CES standing in front of something AI powered, because it's all AI powered, and realizing that they themselves are being made obsolete. I can't tell you how many times in my feed I'm seeing that right now. And so there's a real pincer movement happening here against all jobs on both ends of the economic spectrum. And in the end, like I say, there isn't much in the way of democratic input about this stuff, even as the form factor of this stuff is becoming more and more reliable, and as a result, more and more immediately commercially viable, to the point where we're going to see these things on a factory floor doing human jobs by 2028. The Rip Current is produced and created by me, Jacob Ward. And if you liked this show and you want more content like this, go to theripcurrent.com, where I publish a weekly newsletter that covers these same sorts of stories of the big invisible forces that have us all in their grip. And if you want to really do me a favor, if you could go to where you have listened to this or watched it and like it, share it, or even better, review it. Holy cow, is that helpful? It's the best possible way for me to find a new audience. I really appreciate you being here. Thanks for listening.